feel like worlds are colliding in my head right now. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine Taylor playing a G run.
Well, you may or may not have heard of this little known artist named Taylor Swift. But you probably didn't know that in her early touring days, she had a mandolin player in her band. And not just any mandolin player, someone who is very familiar to us here in the online bluegrass education scene. None other than the Banjo Ben Clark, who was one of the first YouTubers to start doing mandolin, banjo, and guitar lessons here on the platform. And I recently got to chat with him all about this amazing experience and what he learned playing mandolin in Taylor Swift's band. Banjo Ben, oh my goodness. I'm embarrassed to admit that whenever I'm at a party with a bunch of non-musicians and I really want to impress them, I tell them that I know the mandolin player who played with Taylor Swift back in the day. I've done that more than one occasion. And I'm so excited to get to talk about this because I know you played with her, but I don't know many of the details.
Yeah, and I haven't thought about them in a little while. You know, when you reached out to me about this video, which I'm honored to be here with you, David, it was kind of fun to go down memory lane because it's been a while now. And I even was thinking about one particular song that I used to, and we'll probably get into the story, that used to do this real pretty big intro in mandolin where it's just me and Taylor. And I could not remember the name of the song. I was like, man, I've played that song to a million people, literally, played it hundreds of times. And so I had to text the guitar player at Taylor's band. I was like, what's the name of this song that we used to do? All that to say, it's been fun for me to kind of think about the mandolin in that role with, you know, playing in country and pop music, because I don't do that anymore. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to talk about it. And I'm an open book, man, whatever you want to know.
If you can't tell from my enthusiasm, I'm kind of a closet Taylor Swift fan. And
I figured that out because I when we were getting ready for this, I went and just searched. I was like, I need to find some old video of me playing mandolin with her. I said Taylor Swift mandolin, and the first video to pop up was Taylor Swift medley on Mandolin Mondays. And it was really good, man. I was really impressed. That was some hard stuff.
Well, man, just to start with, what era of Taylor were you actually in the band for? Because I know this is a while back, right?
Yeah, it was in the beginning. The first time I heard of Taylor was when her first single was getting really big. And I don't remember if her first single went #1 or not, but it was really close. It was very popular. It was a song called Tim McGraw, which, to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of. And I remember hearing that song on the radio. I'm like, who's this? It's another teenager, that type of thing. And I get a call from a drummer friend of mine that I'd been in another touring band with. And he had left that gig, as I had, and he had been tapped to be the band leader for Taylor. And he called me and he says, hey, man, we need somebody that plays piano and mandolin and banjo and dobro and guitar and sings harmonies. Do you know anybody else in town that does that? And that's how I made my living, was as a utility guy. And the piano piece was really a rare piece for utility guys. There's a lot of great, like bluegrassers especially, that can play me under the table and all the string stuff. What allowed me to work was having a piano background. And I said, Al, man, I don't know anybody else in town that does that. And he was like, okay, well, would you be interested in the job? And I was like, man, to be honest, no, because I moved to Nashville to play country music. I love country music. And I was already disappointed getting into Nashville and it not being as country as I imagined it would be. And I said, man, I'm really not interested. And I've said this to Taylor before, so she wouldn't be offended. I'm not interested to go play for some teenage girl and have to deal with her family, whatever situation that is, because I'd heard stories. And he says, okay. He says, a couple things that may cause you to reconsider. He's like, one is they're putting this band on salary. Now that perks my ears, because that's a rare thing in Nashville, particularly for new artists. But Taylor's dad, sweet guy, Scott Swift, he was really kind, really generous, and he was a very successful business guy, and he had some really good just principles of taking care of people, you know, and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was steady. It's like something I could build a budget on. And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, and the other thing, we got a big tour. We're actually the opener on the George Strait tour. And Al knew I was a Texan, and what I by default felt about George Strait. And so I was like, oh man. And he says, and it's also Ronnie Millsap, which, I mean, that's just right in my heart, like George Strait and Ronnie Millsap. He goes, it's, I think it's 50 dates, all stadium gigs, and at that point I had never been on like a for real tour, like caravan, where like the same caterers travel with you to every gig and they set up a gym and all. And so my eyes were really big about that, wanting to experience that. Plus, get to be around George's guys and Ronnie's guys. And so I really thought about that, and I was persuaded to come over. So it was a neat time to be there. The first album was already out when I was there. We recorded, was it Fearless album? I had them pulled up here. Fearless was in 2008. I went in and played on a little bit of that. I don't know how much of my stuff they kept. I know that I've seen some royalty checks come in here and they're just little stuff. But I was on a lot of live albums too. So we did a live from Soho in New York City that I was on. We did a live record with Def Leppard that I got to play on, and that was video too. That was a long answer to your question. I know you just asked like, when was I with Taylor? And I told you how I got the gig. I was with her another about 2.5 years, which isn't a long time, especially now when you think about her career spanning almost 20 years. But it was an incredible 2.5 years, because we went from a baby act on a big tour, but still the baby act, to whenever I left Taylor, when I resigned and went a different direction, she was the #1 selling artist in the world in 2.5 years.
It's crazy to think of now. Like I saw a video where Rick Beato, famous guitarist, YouTuber, was, discussing whether or not Taylor has had the same impact and influence as the Beatles. Like, did it feel like that when you were in her band? Did you see that trajectory? And what did it feel like to be in that moment of time?
The cool thing about being there when we were there is that every day was a new day of mind-blowing growth. There's not a lot of opportunities to get a front row seat on a rocket ship like that. And of course, she's gotten way bigger since I left, but the trajectory that thing was on was really, really crazy. And I was there for all the, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening type stuff, from, her first songs getting used in some soundtracks. So we would sit on the bus and watch a whole episode of Grey's Anatomy or whatever, and then we'd hear a little clip of her song, and it was just like the bus just exploded, When I thought about like over her career and seeing how big she's gotten and the amazing things that have happened, I thought, I don't think I would trade the slice of time that I was there. I know how corporate things get, and it was already starting to get corporate when I was there. I'm not speaking negatively. It's just things change. When they grow, they have to change. So there was, in that beginning, a really, really close familial atmosphere. Taylor was, she was like my little sister in a lot of ways. And there were some definite, just, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're here. There was a whole lot of those that Taylor were on Saturday Night Live or in Times Square or wherever, and she just turns around before while they're counting us down, she's like, oh my goodness. And we're all just like, yeah, me too. And then we would just go.
On a mandolin side of things, what was it like playing in Taylor's band? I know you said there's like a song where you start off on the mandolin with Taylor, which is crazy. It's mind-blowing to think about that.
Man, that was so fun to have this really upfront acoustic ingredients in her albums, in her early albums that Nate Chapman produced. And they were still poppy, but they had a lot of banjo, a lot of dobro, a lot of mandolin. And she loved to showcase me. She was so cool about that. Like, she loved the music side of it. And it's not that she was adept at music theory. She just had a really good sense about what sounded good. And she had a really good, very good marketing mind, most brilliant marketing mind I've been around. And so she knew what would set her apart from other people, and she loved to push that out front. So nobody else had exactly what we had. Nobody else was featuring mandolin like that at that time, really. I mean, you have guys in Josh Turner and Brad Paisley's touring bands and stuff that were playing mandolin on songs, but they were standing in the back doing the cowboy chord strumming type stuff for the most part, right? But she loved to take the specialty instruments and just like me and her out on the catwalk, spotlight, 50,000 people in the stadium playing acoustic instruments. That was really fun. It was really fun to hear a mandolin come through a line array system in Texas Stadium, or Cowboy Stadium or wherever. There was a song called Mary's Song. It was real pretty. It was on the first album, and I think on the record it's like I had to listen to it a while ago, but let's see if I can play it. It's that kind of stuff. So that was always just me and Taylor out there, just guitar and mandolin for like the intro and then the first verse and the whole first chorus. Then the band would slowly build in. So we're just out there like sitting on the end of the catwalk with the spotlight. And then it just grew over time to where it just started being more of like an improv thing growing into it. And it's a lot of fun because it's in D, a lot of open strings. And so I would just grow and grow and grow and then get into a bunch of just syncopated rhythm. And we would just rock out. And I'd start doing a bunch of triplet stuff. And so we had kind of just over time, without even planning it, just grew into like this several minute feature of guitar and mandolin. So fun. And the crowd would love it. I mean, they would go nuts over a mandolin, Funny story, man. But one night we're playing that in a big, we were like in Staples Center or some huge place, right? And the song that we do before that was in E flat. And so we go out there and we sit down, and Taylor's on my left, and I'm sitting down on the right. And she looks at me and she starts her guitar in, and she forgets to take off her capo. So she's in E flat, right? And as I just played there, that whole thing is built off of open strings, right? So all of and everything that she's wanting to hear from me, like cueing her to grow and like go into different kinds of rhythms, were built off of licks, like these big triplet runs and stuff. And and I try to lean over and I'm like, capo, and she's just, the crowd's going crazy. She just goes into it and I'm like, oh no. Oh no. So I try to start pulling this stuff off in E flat, which, you could play at it in E flat, but you can't get all the open strings. It just wouldn't work. She's just looking at me like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And the band, I don't know if they figured out it was an E flat or not. I think half of them came in D, half of them had figured out it was an E flat, and it just crashed in front of a huge crowd. That was embarrassing. But that's Nashville. That kind of stuff happens where you're getting paid to make the best, like still do a good job even when things like that happen. I did the best I could. I probably could have done better. I need to go practice some E flat licks with David Benedict.
Oh man, teach them to me when you're done, man, because I need to work on that key too. That's why I have a little mandolin capo for. Well, man, speaking of all this, I'm so curious. Like, you're playing these gigantic theaters and stadium shows, and you're playing with a really big band too. Like, I'm sure you guys had like drums and electric bass and all this stuff. Like, how on earth did you set your mandolin up for live sound to be able to compete with all that volume? Did you have like a gear rundown that you could quickly go through here?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to share that. And I didn't know that much going into it, but after Taylor grew a lot, I'd say after like the first year, we started getting sound guys that were at a different level. They had just been on the biggest tours in the world. And with the biggest bands, with the Eagles, with U2, we were getting those guys. We were pulling those guys over. So the knowledge of being able to make a huge place sound great went way up. My setup was pretty straightforward. I had, on my mandolin, I had a Fishman bridge pickup on a Gibson F5G. It's somewhere. It's not back there. It's in the case. There were some shows where I would also have a small condenser, just if the stage volume wasn't too loud, that I could also blend with. But I always went wireless because we were moving like crazy. We had a lot of ground to cover. And it also helped me because I changed instruments almost every song, but I was mainly going through Baggs Paradis. And then from there, of course, to the front of house, where those guys were working some serious magic. Because I got a lot of time in sound check to mess with this stuff, and I was real picky, right? Because I wanted good acoustic sounds. Like I didn't want that MIDI sounding stuff. And we could get that mandolin sounding like I was miking it with a Neumann in that big place. I mean, for what it was, right? So I'd say, here's what we're going to do. Set me up an SM81 or set me up a Neumann. They had all kinds of great mics. And I'd say, I'm going to play in this stadium. I'm going to play my instrument, just me by myself. Then I'm going to plug in. You're going to mute the mic and you're going to match. And we're going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so we're talking about hours over the course of time. But I had a really good sound guy named Russell, and Russell Fisher, I think is his name. And he got them sounding just, I couldn't tell, I couldn't tell. And that was a lot of fun.
In that setting, you're not really playing bluegrass, right? Like what are the different approaches to the mandolin that you had to adopt to fit in that band?
Great question. First of all, Taylor loved it. Her producers did not whenever I played more bluegrass than what was on the records, right? So I love bluegrass. Taylor loved all those sounds, even if she wasn't a bluegrass fan. So I would venture to say I got a little obnoxious at times, just throwing stuff in that, a little Monroe lick on a ballad, whatever. So I did brought in some bluegrass, but otherwise, I think the answer to your question is it is a completely different approach because you're generally trying to offer another layer of an acoustic guitar type pad a lot of times. So there is a lot of this stuff. Just strummy type stuff, where you're just trying to get in the groove with the drummer and just provide a layer of mandolin strum there. My favorite things to play was always the ballad type stuff that got into the cross picking, like that Mary's song. The backup on it would be, and then I'm trying to remember what chords it went to. Maybe a minor, and then just like, and just like bringing in these little single note fills in between the vocal lines. That was always a lot of fun for me. That's the kind of stuff that I liked playing most. I would say that I probably, would play a whole show and not ever play a chop, unless it was like some kind of big explosive ending. So most of the stuff was strummy, with a lot of cross-picking type stuff on the slower things. It's a much more heavily produced environment, right, than bluegrass. And so you had to be very careful to stay out of the way. It would get too muddy, and I really learned to listen a lot. Actually, I learned a lot from her producer, Nate Chapman, because we would go out and we would record stuff live, and then he would bring it in and he'd bring us into the studio and listen back through it, because he was real picky about, his artistic expression. And to him, we were a representation of what he had produced, So he would bring us back in and kind of coach us on, I wouldn't play that there, wouldn't do this. And I learned a lot from him about that, because my tendency was always to overplay, like from coming from a 4-piece bluegrass setting where you don't have really anything that's competing with mandolin unless you have a fiddle. But let's say you don't have a fiddle, then you're kind of in a register that not much. We need Carlton Haney to explain this, but there's not a lot of other things competing with you. Whereas in a country band, it's different. I mean, your hi-hat and your cymbals can sonically interfere with what a mandolin sounds like. And then we do have a fiddle that's quite piercing, in a country band. And then you've got electric guitar that's right up in there with you. So it can just turn to mush if you play all the things that you kind of think you hear, So what I would do is, where I would play mostly is in the places where it's very obvious that's where I was going to play, like those intros and very broken down moments, a lot of tremolo type stuff in those broken down moments. But once full band came in, I just learned over time to just lay back, produce just more of a little thin layer of strums, and realize that if I tried to get busy or do anything cool to impress anybody during that, it was just going to step on somebody else and create some kind of interference that wouldn't be good for the whole production.
That's a different ball game, man. I'm curious, like, musically and otherwise, personally, did it feel like confining or constricting playing in that setting? Was that like a factor at all in you leaving the band?
It was not. So different artists, and I've played for quite a few artists over the years, different artists are more picky about what their bands play than others, right? So there are stories of very well-known artists that would fire somebody in their band for not playing it just like the record, right? Mm-hmm. And you may look at that, and as bluegrassers are like, oh man, that'd be horrible. You got to get up there and play the same notes every night. But the way that they see it is, I just spent $1.5 million producing this record, choosing the best notes that I think possible to play. And that's what I want represented out on the road. I never played for one of those artists. Every artist that I played for gave quite a bit of freedom. In country music, you've got to play the signature licks or it's not the song. You know what I mean? That's where it differs from bluegrass. I mean, you can kick off Old Home Place on banjo and play it 10 different ways and it's still Old Home Place as long as you're kind of getting at the melody. But you get a Taylor Swift song, I'm not playing it very well, but Our Song is the name of that song, right? And that lick had to be there. So I couldn't get up, and I was playing on banjo actually, but I couldn't get up and play my own version of that, right? But the rest of the song I could, and the longer that the band played together, the more free we got at experimenting in a very tasteful way. We'd start to even kind of play games, where you play with these guys so much. I mean, we were gone on the road over 300 days a year when I was there. So you're playing, when all said and done, 120 to 150 shows a year. I mean, you're playing together all the time and a lot of rehearsals when you're in town. So you really know these guys and so you'll play something one time, kind of messing around and joking around maybe, and one of the guys will say, man, that was cool, do that again. And then they'll come up with something that kind of fits it, and then we'll just work that into a song for 4 or 5 shows and just have fun nailing it at that one little spot, And Taylor was always just very gracious in letting us have fun and doing that kind of stuff. So I didn't never find it limiting. A lot of the things that I had to play the same way every night, I thought was really tasty anyway. So I enjoyed it. And my banjo teacher, Alan Mundy, somebody asked him one time, he got off the stage at a festival, and they're like, man, kind of disappointed, to be honest, because you played this one fiddle tune. And he said, you played it exactly like your record, like note for note. He's like, I figured that you would improvise. And he said, well, when I recorded the record, I played the very best notes that I thought I could play. And so am I supposed to change my mind on what those very best notes are? And now, I just thought that was always a kind of a funny story, because there's Alan that could improvise anything he wanted. But he would often play the same thing over and over again. So there were some things that I just, that I played the same way every night and never really got tired of them, because it was just good. It was good. And the records were well produced, and where they needed to change, I would change them and kind of create my own little thing and have freedom to do that. I never felt musically limited. I did miss playing certain types of music, and that's kind of a different question, because it wasn't bluegrass. It wasn't some of the country stuff that I really enjoyed playing. But for what it wasn't limiting.
Well, I'm curious. Like, I've never gotten to meet her. Like, what is she like personally? I mean, no worries if you don't want to share too much about that, but I'm fascinated.
Taylor is a very kind person. She is very kind. She really wanted to take care of her people, and I think that's still evident today. You hear these news stories of her compensating folks very well. She was like that from the beginning. Like I say, I think she learned that from her dad. She's very, very artistic. And if you've never been around a really, really artistic person, I think sometimes you can think that maybe at times they're being rude. And when I was first around Taylor, I kind of thought that because sometimes she would disengage or just seem to ignore me. What I learned is that there was so much going on in her brain. Like I would sit there and I'm talking to her and she would disengage and then I'd be like, Taylor, did you hear anything I said? And she would just like grab her guitar and just start playing a new song, you know? So she's just like writing songs as we're sitting there talking. But so I had to kind of get used to how to deal with a creative like that. And I considered myself a creative, but she was on a different level. Whether you like her stuff or not, that's beside the point. I don't think anyone can deny what just a brilliant artist she was. And even back then, her writing, I was always blown away with how catchy and how diverse of songs she could come up with the same 4 chords. It was just amazing. I was trying to write at that time too, and I eventually went on and got a publishing deal like I was talking about. But I would always just be taken aback about how did you come up with another song that sounds completely different with almost the same chord progression? And so some people might look at that and like, yeah, it's always the same 4 chords. And I'm like, you try it. You try taking 4 chords or 5 chords and creating that diverse of a library. I think she's a brilliant artist, and she was always kind, just she loved my wife, Hannah. She actually wrote a song for us one time, which was really cool. I don't think she ever recorded it, but she played it for us maybe on our anniversary or something. So, like I said, when things start to grow, then your interaction, with an artist changes. And I'd seen that in some other bands that I was with too. And so, nothing really stays the same, but I would assume that Taylor's still the same, has the same sweetness that I knew when I was there.
The real question is, did she ever play mandolin?
Yeah, she would mess around with it a little bit, and she liked to mess around with banjo. She had, a 6-string fake banjo, but she liked the sound. Like what I appreciate about Taylor, we're talking 16, 17, 18 years old, a girl from Pennsylvania that never heard any bluegrass, right? When I would play something that was good, whether I was by myself and just messing around or whether I was playing with her, if I played something and I heard it and I thought, hey, that was pretty good, she always recognized it as good. And so that always impressed me, that this young girl who didn't know anything about the music recognized like what sounds good, and really appreciated the sound of the instrument. I mean, I would be playing like a Tony Rice type thing, because I was always trying to dig more into bluegrass. Anytime we weren't playing her stuff, I'm over there flat picking something, and she's like, "Oh, what was that? What was that?" And I play it. Where can you work that in? She had me teach her some flat. I taught her a G run. She would play a G run. So yeah, so I was always impressed by that she appreciated music. And I think that a lot of people listen to her music if they're being critical of her, which they can have that opinion. And her music's not my favorite by any means. I don't listen to Taylor Swift, but I think that you have to recognize the brilliance there, and the gift that she has. Amazing, and like I said, I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot.
I feel like worlds are colliding in my head right now. This is crazy.
Yeah. Imagine Taylor playing a G run.
Well, what you're doing now, man, it's so different from that. It's kind of hard to believe. Like, you're like the man online for bluegrass instrument education. You were like the first blue tuber on YouTube to do this. Like, what was that transition from playing in Taylor Swift's band to doing this? And I heard you say that you didn't want to just ride on Taylor's coattails. You wanted to make your own identity too. Like, what's the story behind all that?
Yeah, so I didn't really understand the power of YouTube until like 6 months ago, if I'm honest. Not really, but in the early years, like I didn't understand what was going on. I was putting up videos and not knowing if anybody would see them. And a lot of people remark on like my silly antics and characters that I do and stuff like that. What they have to understand is that I was doing that from the very beginning because I didn't think anybody would watch it except my friends or family. And I was doing stuff to humiliate myself. What happened was that they started getting popular, and then it became what I did, and I enjoy it too. I enjoy having fun and not taking myself seriously. But yeah, I didn't realize what that was going to do. So I started putting out YouTube videos when I was on the road with Taylor. I think my very first videos, I was already playing with Taylor, but I love bluegrass more than that. And so I was always working on Tony stuff or Chris Thiele stuff or Wayne Benson stuff, whatever. I was always looking to learn more, looking online, and there wasn't any good instruction. So I kind of told myself, if I ever actually learn how to play some of this stuff note for note, and you couldn't slow YouTube down back then, so you were having to do it the old fashioned way. If I ever learn this stuff, then I'm just going to make videos teaching people how to play it note for note. And so that's where the whole YouTube thing came from, was a desire, because I figured there's got to be more people like me out there that want to learn this Tony Rice lick or whatever. And then it just started growing. I started getting a few hundred views a day, then 1,000 and 2,000. And I was like, what's happening here? So that's all happening while I'm out with Taylor. And then, when I did go and write songs for Sony, that's a very, very tough way to make a living. I had a lot of fun there, and I got some songs recorded. It was cool, but I knew it wasn't a long-term thing. And that's when I first got the idea of maybe trying to monetize the teaching side of thing. Like, I loved it so much. I'm a teacher by nature. I was just kind of born loving to do that. So I polled my audience and just said, hey, if I deliver content weekly, would y'all consider supporting me for like $5 a month? And enough people said, yeah, I think we would. That I took the plunge. And that was like 2012. And I've been doing it, creating a new video every week for 13, 14 years. So that's like 850 plus lessons now. And it's been incredible. It's been really, really cool. I've really enjoyed being home, that aspect of it. Like I was talking about the tour side of it, man, we were gone a lot, and I wanted to start a family, and I wanted to just ease more into the parts of life that I thought were more valuable than just going and blowing. Nothing wrong with that by any means. There's people that do that their whole lives, and that's fine. But I knew for me that I wanted to anchor down somewhere and have a family and try to be there for them. And that's, wraps back around to what I said at the beginning of our video, that I was so thankful about the Taylor experience. Yes, I was thankful about what we got to go do, but more so I was thankful for that I got to see it from the other side, knowing that I did it and that I didn't have to keep stretching for it. Because there's a lot of people that just get strung out on the next achievement, and they're out there all of a sudden 20, 30 years, always chasing the next biggest thing and not realizing that ultimately that's not worth anything. Like, there's other things in life that are worth more than getting that next gig. And life just kind of passes them by, and I didn't want that to be me. And it would have been me, I think, if I hadn't have experienced such a rocket ship ride and seen it from the top. Very thankful. And I'm, thank you for your kind words. You young YouTubers, y'all do so great. And I'm learning from y'all now. I know that when I look at all the guys doing so great now on YouTube, the ones I talk to like you're like, oh man, you were the guy, you started it. And I appreciate those compliments, but I love watching y'all and the new things that you develop, and it affects how I teach and how I produce stuff, is seeing, wow, that's really effective. Like, the way you did that's really good. I'm just very thankful to get to do this for a living and help people play bluegrass, man. That's what's kind of funny is I'm probably, and I want to say this humbly, I really do, but I've just heard from so many people that, I've been responsible for bringing a lot of people into this music, a lot of people that would not normally be in bluegrass, for whatever reason, enter in through my door. And what's so funny about that is that I didn't grow up around it. I came to it late. And maybe that's why. Maybe because the way I talk about it and relate to it is as somebody who's had to learn about it as an adult. And so maybe that appeals to some folks that are doing the same thing and saying, come on over. The water's awesome over here in bluegrass, and it's even better than pop country.
Well, I hope folks out there will go check out your site if they haven't already. Your channel is incredible, but then over on your site, you have those in-depth lessons and just like a whole curriculum worth of stuff to go through. I've gone through a lot of it myself. I don't know if you know that. Like, I love the way that you teach, and just your approach to the mandolin is just so intuitive and so relatable. So please, folks, go out there, go check out Banjo Ben's site and the general store if you're looking for a new mandolin. All that
Yeah,
stuff.
man, that's a lot of fun. If y'all, I started the store in 2017, and I've got such an incredible team there in Southwest Missouri, and we work together every day from distance, and I go up there as much as I can. They are outstanding. Credit to them, and thank y'all for your support of the general store.
This was so much fun, Ben.
It was such a fanboy experience for me to get to talk to Ben about this. And if you enjoyed this conversation too, then do me a favor, head down below, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave me a comment if you have ideas for other videos like this down the line. And please do check out all of Banjo Ben's amazing learning resources online. And if you'd like even more mandolin content in your life, then check out this video right here on screen. A conversation I did with none other than the Wayne Benson, who Ben mentioned in this video, one of my favorite mandolin players. I think you're gonna like it. Happy picking.